The waiter slammed the menu shut and said it straight to his face. "We don't serve your kind here." The whole restaurant went silent. A few people smirked. One woman whispered, "He should have known better." And as Marcus stood there, stunned, the manager nodded in agreement, like it was just policy. That's how it starts. In broad daylight, with no shame. The night was supposed to be perfect. Atlanta glowed that evening, streets washed in soft gold from streetlights, wind carrying the faint hum of weekend jazz from open car windows. Derrick Lawson's reflection blinked back at him through the restaurant's glass doors. Navy suit, black tie, crisp white shirt, confidence wrapped in quiet calm. He straightened his collar one last time before walking in. He'd spent weeks planning this. His mother's 70th birthday. 70 years of survival, sacrifice, and grace. If anybody deserved elegance, it was her. Primestone Restaurant wasn't cheap. It was the kind of place people booked for proposals and anniversaries. Marble floors, white tablecloths, crystal chandeliers dripping from the ceiling like frozen sunlight. And yet, as Derrick glanced around, the one thing missing was color. The room was full, but not a single black face sat among the tables. Still, he smiled. He was used to that. Derrick Lawson, 39, had made his peace with being the only one in the room. He'd been the only black man at his college business mixer, the only one in half his client meetings, the only one people called sir with a question mark at the end. It didn't break him. It built him. Real estate had been good to him. 15 years in the game, from hustling rentals to closing multi-million-dollar deals. He had that type of composure people paid attention to. Voice steady, shoes polished, handshake firm. But underneath the calm, he carried the quiet fatigue of a man who'd had to earn every ounce of his peace twice. And tonight, that peace felt earned. His mother, Elaine Lawson, was radiant when she stepped out of the car. Silver gray dress, pearls glimmering like soft light, a smile that could still melt the years away. "Lord have mercy," she said, laughing as she looked up at the chandeliers. "You trying to spoil me tonight, baby?" He grinned. "You only turned 70 once, Mama." His younger sister Jasmine joined them, bright, chatty, her husband beside her in a tailored blazer. The family looked like a magazine cover of grace and pride. 3 generations of effort wrapped in one table reservation. As they walked in, the faint hum of jazz filled the air, a smooth Miles Davis track floating through conversation and silverware clinking. Waiters in black vests moved like choreography, voices low, polite, efficient. The smell of roasted garlic and seared steak mixed with something else. That familiar, unspoken tension that always followed when black excellence entered white comfort zones. Derrick noticed it immediately. The double take from the couple at the bar. The curious glance from the hostess before her smile appeared. The slight pause. Just long enough to be noticed by anyone who's spent a lifetime reading pauses. He ignored it. He'd learned long ago that peace often depended on how much disrespect you were willing to overlook. At the host stand, he greeted with a warm, "Evening. Reservation for Lawson, party of 5. The hostess looked up, polite smile flickering like a light bulb trying to stay on. "Of course, sir. Just a moment." She started typing, eyes darting between the screen and him. Something about her posture changed, shoulders stiffening, tone losing warmth. Derrick stayed calm, patient. He'd seen this before. Politeness turning cautious, hospitality turning hesitant. Behind him, his mother admired the decor, whispering to Jasmine, "Ain't this place beautiful?" He smiled to himself. He wanted her to enjoy it, to see elegance as something that could belong to her, too. He glanced around again. The room was a painting. Golden chandeliers swaying softly, crystal glasses catching light, couples leaning in over fine wine. But beneath the beauty, there was that subtle coldness. The kind that never spoke out loud, but always found ways to remind you, this space wasn't built with you in mind. A waiter brushed past, eyes flicking over Derrick like he was in the wrong place. The kind of look that said, "You sure you can afford to be here?" He ignored it too. He reached for his phone, checking the reservation confirmation. 7 p.m. sharp. Everything was planned to perfection. Flowers, ordered. Dessert, pre-selected. Even the jazz band tipped ahead of time to play one of his mother's favorite songs later that evening. What a wonderful world. He smiled again. Yeah, tonight was going to be special. The hostess was still typing. Too long, too awkward, too silent. Elaine finally asked softly, "Everything all right, sweetheart?" "Yes, ma'am," the hostess said quickly. But her tone had that crack in it, that quiet uncertainty that carried more weight than any slur. She excused herself, murmuring something to the man behind the counter. He came over, leaned in, glanced toward Derrick, whispered back. Derrick caught it, that look, the one where someone's politeness gets tangled up with prejudice. But he stayed still. His mother was watching. He wasn't going to ruin her night. The hostess returned. "Smile tighter now. We're just double-checking something with our system, sir, if you don't mind waiting a few minutes." "Of course," Derrick said calmly. "Take your time." They moved aside. Standing near the entrance, the waiting area felt colder than it should have. People brushed past, glancing briefly, curiosity behind polite smiles. His mother's smile faltered a little. "I hope they ain't lost it, baby." He touched her hand gently. "Don't worry, Mama. Everything's under control." But inside, something small began to shift. That quiet tremor that starts when you know peace won't last. He looked back toward the hostess. She was whispering again, eyes darting. Another waiter joined her, glancing over. The music in the background, once warm and mellow, now felt distant, muffled. The light above the host stand flickered once, as if even the room itself knew the mood had changed. Still, Derrick smiled through it. That's what strong black men do in public spaces. They smile through suspicion. They play calm while being quietly sized up. They stand dignified so their mothers don't have to see their sons break under the same weight they carried all their lives. He looked at his reflection in the glass again. Still composed, still proud, but something in his eyes had shifted. A storm forming behind calm waters. And deep down, he knew, even in elegance, prejudice always finds its seat at the table. The jazz hummed on, smooth and steady, but the rhythm didn't match the air around Derrick anymore. The room was warm, golden, alive with chatter, but he could feel the chill creeping in from the host stand, quiet and sharp as glass. The hostess still hadn't moved from behind the counter. He whispered something again to the man standing beside her. Her fake smile plastered on like paint that couldn't cover the cracks. Derrick looked at his phone again. The email glowing on the screen. Reservation, Prime Stone Restaurant, 7 p.m., Lawson party, 5 guests. Confirmed. He even had the screenshot of the confirmation number, because he planned everything that way. He was a man who left no room for mistakes. But tonight, it seemed the mistake was him. He approached the counter again, calm, but firmer this time. "Excuse me, miss, just double-checking. The reservation should be under Lawson. I have the confirmation right here." She didn't meet his eyes. "Right, yes, I saw that. It's just, Our system seems to be acting up tonight. He tilted his head slightly. Acting up, huh? That's funny. I got a confirmation just this morning. The man beside her, older, maybe a junior manager, stepped forward. Sir, we're doing our best to locate it. There might have been a mix-up. Derrick nodded slowly, patient but not blind. I see. Behind him, his family waited, trying to mask their growing unease. His sister Jasmine whispered to her husband, "You think they lost it?" Her husband murmured back, "Doesn't feel like that." Elaine, his mother, tried to keep her smile, still clinging to Grace. "Maybe they're just busy, baby." But the restaurant wasn't busy. Derrick had already noticed that. Empty tables in the back, waiters chatting near the bar. No rush, no reason, just delay. The hostess clicked a few more times on her screen, then exhaled. I'm not seeing it in our main system, sir. Are you sure you didn't book for tomorrow?" He took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I booked for tonight. Here's the date. The time, the confirmation number, everything." He turned his phone toward her. She leaned in, eyes flicking across the screen for less than a second. It's strange. Maybe the online system didn't sync." The man beside her nodded like backup. "Yeah, that happens sometimes." Derrick kept his tone calm, but the warmth had left his voice. "Happens to who exactly?" The question landed like quiet thunder. Not loud, but heavy enough to make the man blink. The hostess didn't answer right away. Instead, she smiled. That thin, performative smile that always came right before things turned ugly. "If you'd like to wait in the bar area, sir, we'll see what we can do." Derrick straightened his shoulders. "We'll wait right here." The family stayed near the front, awkwardly trying to look comfortable. The room had changed now, not physically, but emotionally. Conversations had quieted just slightly. The couple near the entrance glanced over. The waiter carrying plates slowed as he passed. One woman at a nearby table tilted her head just enough to get a better view. The man beside her nodded like backup. "Yeah, that happens sometimes." Derrick kept his tone calm, but the warmth had left his voice. "Happens to who exactly?" The question landed like quiet thunder. Not loud, but heavy enough to make the man blink. The hostess didn't answer right away. Instead, she smiled, that thin, performative smile that always came right before things turned ugly. "If you'd like to wait in the bar area, sir, we'll see what we can do." Derrick straightened his shoulders. "We'll wait right here." The family stayed near the front, awkwardly trying to look comfortable. The room had changed now, not physically, but emotionally. Conversations had quieted just slightly. The couple near the entrance glanced over. The waiter carrying plates slowed as he passed. One woman at a nearby table tilted her head just enough to get a better view. It wasn't loud prejudice. It was the kind that whispered through posture, tone, and eye contact. The kind you couldn't film, but you could feel. Derrick's mother smoothed her dress. "Derrick, it's okay, baby. We can go somewhere else." He shook his head softly. "No, Ma. You've been waiting for this. You're getting your dinner tonight." She smiled weakly, but he could see the hurt flicker in her eyes. Not because of the inconvenience, but because she recognized this pattern too well. She'd seen it before, in different cities, different decades, same story. They always made you feel like you were asking for too much, even when all you wanted was what you'd already earned. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Every few minutes, Derrick glanced at the hostess, who avoided eye contact with almost athletic precision. The man beside her whispered something again, and she nodded. Then she picked up the phone, dialed, and began talking quietly, glancing toward Derrick's family the whole time. His sister crossed her arms. "You seeing this?" "Yeah," he said, voice low. "I'm seeing it." He wasn't angry, not yet. Anger was too easy. What he felt was disappointment. That deep, exhausted kind that comes from watching dignity get tested for no reason. Another 5 minutes passed. Finally, the hostess came back with a rehearsed sigh. "Sir, I'm really sorry, but it looks like our system must have double-booked that slot. We can't seat a party of 5 right now." Derrick blinked. "Double-booked?" "Yes, sir." He looked around the restaurant again, at the empty tables in the back, chairs perfectly lined, no one waiting behind them. "Double-booked," he repeated quietly. "But half your tables are empty." The man behind the counter stepped forward, nervous. "Those are reserved, sir." Derrick smiled faintly. "For who? Folks who actually exist, or folks who just happen to have the right last name?" The air around them thickened. A few nearby diners turned, pretending to check their menus, but listening closely. The hostess's polite mask cracked just enough to show discomfort. "Sir, there's no need to get upset," she said. "I'm not upset," Derrick replied evenly. "I'm asking for the truth." Her voice tightened. "We're doing our best," he nodded. "And your best looks an awful lot like avoidance." Behind him, Elaine touched his arm gently. "Baby, please, let's just go somewhere else." He looked at her, her soft, tired eyes, her pearls catching the light. She didn't deserve another reminder that no amount of grace could shield you from small minds. He turned back to the hostess. "You said you can't seat us?" She hesitated. "Not at the moment." "All right," he said softly, but there was iron under the calm. "Then I'd like to speak with your manager." The air around them thickened. A few nearby diners turned, pretending to check their menus, but listening closely. The hostess's polite mask cracked just enough to show discomfort. "Sir, there's no need to get upset," she said. "I'm not upset," Derrick replied evenly. "I'm asking for the truth." Her voice tightened. "We're doing our best." He nodded. "And your best looks an awful lot like avoidance." Behind him, Elaine touched his arm gently. "Baby, please, let's just go somewhere else." He looked at her, her soft, tired eyes, her pearls catching the light. She didn't deserve another reminder that no amount of grace could shield you from small minds. He turned back to the hostess. "You said you can't seat us?" She hesitated. "Not at the moment." "All right," he said softly, but there was iron under the calm. "Then I'd like to speak with your manager." The words hit like a chord shift, the kind that changes the music in the room. The hostess swallowed. One moment, she disappeared into the back, and Derrick could feel the atmosphere tighten further. The people nearby were no longer pretending not to watch. Every eye was on him now, every unspoken assumption hanging in the air like smoke. He could feel it in his chest, that familiar cocktail of frustration and restraint. The lesson every black man learns early: stay calm, no matter how loud the disrespect gets. The manager arrived, tall, mid-40s, expensive watch, crisp smile. He extended a hand. "Mr. Lawson, I'm told there's been a mix-up." Derrick shook it, firm but cool. "That's what they're saying." "I truly apologize for the inconvenience," the manager said smoothly. "We're trying to resolve it." Derrick's tone was polite, but his eyes didn't move. "I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for a table." The manager hesitated, glancing around. "Let me check what we can do." He walked back to the stand, whispered to the hostess, and then picked up the phone. Derrick couldn't hear what he was saying, but the looks exchanged said everything. After another quiet minute, the manager returned. "I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight, sir." Derrick stared at him for a moment that stretched too long. Then he said quietly, "Yeah, I figured." He turned to his mother. "Come on, Ma. Let's go." They started to leave, but as they walked past the bar, he caught a few whispers. "Guess that's what happens when you don't belong," someone muttered softly. Derrick didn't turn around. He just exhaled through his nose, slow and heavy, and walked toward the door. Behind him, the chandeliers sparkled like nothing had happened. But inside him, a storm had begun, silent for now, but growing stronger by the second. Outside the restaurant's wide glass doors, the night air felt thick, heavy with the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Derrick stood near the entrance, one hand still on the handle, the other clenched around his phone. He wasn't leaving yet. Not like this. Not when he'd done everything right. His mother and sister lingered behind him, uneasy. The city lights glowed faintly off the marble floors inside, reflecting his face back at him through the glass. Calm, controlled, steady. But there was something new in his eyes now, hurt disguised as patience. He took a slow breath, turned, and walked back in. "Derrick," Elaine whispered, voice tight with worry. "Baby, please, don't." Outside the restaurant's wide glass doors, the night air felt thick, heavy with the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Derrick stood near the entrance, one hand still on the handle, the other clenched around his phone. He wasn't leaving yet. Not like this. Not when he'd done everything right. His mother and sister lingered behind him, uneasy. The city lights glowed faintly off the marble floors inside, reflecting his face back at him through the glass. Calm, controlled, steady, but there was something new in his eyes now. Hurt disguised as patience. He took a slow breath, turned, and walked back in. "Derrick," Elaine whispered, voice tight with worry. "Baby, please, don't." He gave her a soft look, not angry, just resolved. "I just want to see something, Ma." He walked straight to the host stand, not raising his voice, not demanding, just walking with quiet purpose. The staff noticed immediately. Tension rippled through them like static. The hostess stiffened, her fake smile back on, but now it was thinner, strained. "Sir," she began. He lifted his phone calmly. "You said there was no reservation, right? But if I'm not mistaken," he tapped his screen, showing her the confirmation email again. "That's my name right there. Lawson, party of 5, Primestone, 7 p.m. You said double booked. Funny thing is, your tables back there are still empty." She blinked fast, glancing at the manager hovering a few steps behind. "Sir, I already explained." Derrick stepped aside slightly, pointing at the seating chart behind the counter. "No, see? I just want to understand it myself. Maybe I'm missing something." That's all it took. The manager's voice cut sharp. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the counter." Derrick frowned slightly. "I'm not causing trouble. I'm just—" "Sir," the man interrupted, tone rising now, "you're making my staff uncomfortable." The words dropped like a weight. The conversation in the dining room quieted again. Forks paused mid-air. People looked up from their wine glasses, some curious, others eager to watch the scene unfold. Derrick blinked slowly, as if processing the absurdity of what he'd just heard. "Uncomfortable? Because I asked about my reservation?" The manager crossed his arms, posture stiff. "Your tone, your behavior, it's becoming disruptive. I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside." Behind Derrick, his sister Jasmine muttered under her breath, "This some straight-up nonsense." Her husband tried to calm her down, but his own face was tight with disbelief. Elaine stood frozen, clutching her purse. "Derrick, honey, please, let's just go." But Derrick stayed still, voice low and measured. "You're really doing this? In front of my family? I show you proof and you still treat me like I'm lying?" The manager didn't answer. Instead, he gave a subtle nod, and that's when the two security guards appeared from the hallway near the bar. Both white, both bronze-shouldered, both already walking like they'd been waiting for a reason. The hostess stepped back. "Sir, please don't make this worse." Derrick turned toward the guards, hands relaxed at his sides. "You serious right now?" One of them spoke, voice flat. "We're just gonna escort you out, sir. Let's keep things calm." Keep things calm. The phrase that always meant keep things quiet while we humiliate you. The restaurant fell completely silent now. The only sound was the soft hum of jazz, still playing somewhere in the background, a slow, tragic rhythm that didn't fit the moment at all. Derrick looked around. "Anybody in here see me raise my voice? Anybody see me threaten anyone?" His words carried, low but sharp. "I asked about my damn reservation." The diners didn't move. A few looked away, pretending to check their menus. Others whispered. One man, a few tables over, muttered, "See, always causing a scene." That was it. That one sentence, quiet, casual, dripping with centuries of entitlement, cut deeper than the guard's approach. Derrick exhaled, slow and heavy, and turned back to his mother. She looked small now, fragile, her hands trembling as she whispered, "Please, baby, don't let them take this moment from you." He nodded gently. "I won't, Ma." Then he faced the guards again. "You don't have to touch me. I'm leaving." He said it calm, not defeated. Just done. The kind of done that comes when you realize no amount of calm, no amount of money, no amount of patience can buy respect from people who refuse to see you as equal. He picked up his blazer from the back of a nearby chair and straightened it slowly. His dignity was the only thing he still had control over, and he wasn't about to drop it for their comfort. As he turned toward the exit, one of the guards followed a little too close. Derrick stopped, pivoted slightly. "You can back up now. I said I'm leaving." The guard hesitated, unsure what to do. The manager looked nervous. A few phones lifted under tables, quietly recording. Derrick saw them, the little glowing screens catching injustice in 4K. But even that didn't comfort him, because he knew how it worked. They'd see it, they'd share it, they'd argue about it, but living through it still belonged to him alone. He reached the door, held it open for his mother, his sister, his brother-in-law. Each one passed through, heads high, but hearts heavy. Before stepping out, he turned back one last time, scanning the faces inside. The hostess, the manager, the customers who watched silently like spectators at some twisted play. His voice, calm but edged with heartbreak, carried across the dining room. "You'll serve 1,000 people tonight, but you'll remember this one." Then he walked out. The door swung shut behind him with a dull thud. The bell above it gave its cheerful little ring again, cruelly mocking the gravity of what had just happened. Outside, the city felt colder. Cars drove by, music spilling faintly from open windows. People laughed somewhere down the block, free from the heaviness that followed the Lawsons now, like a shadow. Elaine stood beside her son, tears she didn't want to show, clinging to her lashes. She whispered, "After everything you built, after all you done right, they still see you like that?" Derrick swallowed hard. His throat burned, but his voice stayed low. Guess some people can't see past their comfort, Ma. He didn't look back at the restaurant again. He couldn't. Behind the glass, the staff returned to work, pretending nothing had happened. But something had. A man had been stripped of his dignity in the quietest way possible, without a single slur, without a single shove, without a single shout. And yet the wound cut just as deep. But across the street, someone had been watching. An older man with gray hair, sitting near the window with his half-finished steak, phone still recording. His name was Tom Willis, a retired journalist who'd seen too many moments like this go unseen. As Derrick and his family walked away, Tom muttered to himself, "Not this time." He hit save on the recording. And in that single tap, the story stopped belonging to the restaurant and started belonging to the world. Scene 4. The truth unfolds. Tom Willis had seen a lot in his 62 years. Protests, politics, people pretending to care. But what he saw that night through the window of Primestone hit a nerve he thought had gone numb decades ago. He'd retired from journalism 5 years back. Spent most nights now eating quiet dinners, nursing a glass of Merlot, scrolling through headlines that all sounded the same. Another incident, another debate. He used to tell himself he'd done his part, covered civil rights marches, police hearings, equality summits. But when he saw Derrick Lawson standing at that host stand, calm and polite while being treated like a problem, something old in him woke up. He'd started recording halfway through. Instinct, muscle memory. The way Derrick stood tall, the staff whispering, the sudden appearance of security, it all played out like a script he'd seen too many times before. When Derrick walked out with his family, Tom stayed still, phone still in hand, anger building slow but deep. Around him, the restaurant went back to business like nothing had happened. Silverware clinking, laughter echoing, white napkins fluttering like flags of denial. He couldn't finish his food. He tossed a few bills on the table, grabbed his coat, and followed them outside. Derrick and his family stood on the sidewalk under the soft yellow streetlights. His mother was quiet, eyes distant. Jasmine was pacing, furious, her husband trying to calm her down. Derrick just stood still, jaw clenched, hands buried in his pockets like he was holding his dignity in place. Tom hesitated, then approached slowly. "Excuse me, Mr. Lawson?" Derrick turned, eyes cautious but polite. "Yeah?" Tom took a breath. "I saw what happened in there. I filmed the whole thing." Derrick's expression flickered, surprise, then weariness. "You filmed it?" "Yeah," Tom said, voice steady but firm. "And I'm not letting this one disappear into another quiet apology." Jasmine crossed her arms. "You really think that'll change anything?" Tom nodded. "Not by itself. But silence never did either." Elaine looked up, voice trembling but graceful. "Son, what do you plan to do?" Tom glanced down at his phone, the screen still glowing with the frozen frame of Derrick being confronted by security. "Tell the truth, the way it happened, not the way they'll spin it." Derrick sighed, shaking his head slightly. "Man, I just wanted to celebrate my mother's birthday. I'm not looking to be nobody's headline." Tom met his eyes. "I know, but they made you one anyway." For a long moment, they just stood there. Two men from different worlds, connected by the same kind of exhaustion. Then Derrick nodded slowly. "All right, do what you gotta do." Tom went home and sat in front of his old oak desk, the same one he'd written stories on for 30 years. He plugged in his phone, uploaded the clip, watched it again in full. The image was steady, clear, the voices crisp enough to sting. He paused it on Derrick's face, calm, dignified, betrayed. Then he started typing. A black family was denied service at Primestone, even with a confirmed reservation. I watched it. I filmed it. They weren't loud. They weren't wrong. They were just unwanted. This is what racism looks like when it wears a suit and calls itself policy. He hit post, and the world did what it always does when truth gets caught on camera. It woke up. By midnight, the post had over 500,000 views. By 2 a.m., it was trending on Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. By morning, the headlines spread like wildfire. Atlanta family denied service. Restaurant accused of racial bias. The video replayed everywhere, on news feeds, comment threads, morning talk shows. People argued in real time. Some said, "This is disgusting." Others typed, "There's always more to the story." And a few hid behind the same tired phrases. Don't make everything about race. But it was about race. Everyone could see it. The tone, the body language, the hesitation that only showed up when the customer was black. By 7 a.m., Derrick's phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls. His name was everywhere now, whether he wanted it or not. He sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun cutting through half-drawn blinds. His mother was in the next room, quietly praying. Jasmine was pacing again, scrolling through her phone, reading comments aloud. Look! This man handled himself with class. And this one, always the same story. They act polite until you question them. God, I hate people. Derrick stayed silent. He wasn't angry. He wasn't proud. He was tired. Tired in a way that coffee couldn't fix and sleep couldn't cure. Across town, Tom's inbox exploded. Local news stations reached out. Old colleagues messaged him. Tom, you just dropped the next viral bomb. He didn't care about fame. He cared about truth. And for the first time in years, it felt like he was doing something that mattered again. He sat back in his chair, exhaling slowly. You did good, he muttered to himself. You finally did something good. By noon, Primestone's PR team was in full panic mode. The restaurant's official account posted a statement that read, "We at Primestone value diversity and inclusion. We regret the confusion that occurred last night and are conducting an internal review. We ask the public to withhold judgment until all facts are known." Confusion, the favorite word of those caught in clarity. The comments flooded under it. Thousands of people calling it out, hundreds defending it, millions watching. That night, the story hit television. News anchors with polished voices asked, was this really racism? Or an unfortunate misunderstanding? Experts debated on panels. Hashtags multiplied. Strangers on the internet decided what Derrick felt, what he meant, and what it all represented. And somewhere in that noise, the truth kept beating quietly. A man just wanted to give his mother a peaceful birthday. But peace doesn't sell headlines. Injustice does. Tom sat alone in his living room, TV flickering, phone vibrating endlessly. He saw Derrick's face on every screen now, frozen, mid-sentence. Labeled Atlanta victim of restaurant bias. He felt a mix of pride and guilt. He'd told the truth, but he'd also dragged a private man into a public fire. He whispered to himself, "Lord, please let this lead somewhere good." Because he knew how this story usually ended, with outrage that burned hot, then burned out. But something about Derrick Lawson felt different. There was dignity in him the world couldn't ignore. And somewhere deep down, Tom hoped that dignity might finally make America listen. By Friday morning, Derrick Lawson's quiet life had vanished. The story was everywhere. Morning shows, talk radio, podcasts, timelines. His phone vibrated until the battery gave up. Every notification carried his own name spelled out by strangers. Some messages were prayers. Others were poison. His face looped on TV beside talking heads in perfect suits. Was this really racism or an unfortunate mix-up? Should businesses be held accountable for simple mistakes? Mistake. That word clawed at him, because nothing about what happened had been accidental. At the Lawson home, the blinds were half closed. The air smelled faintly of breakfast no one had eaten. Elaine sat at the table, Bible open but unread. Her son scrolled through his phone, jaw tight. Every headline repeated the same half-truth. Family claims racial bias at upscale restaurant. Claimed. As if dignity were an allegation. Maya's teenage cousin, home from college, burst in waving her tablet. Uncle D, they're playing it again on Channel 9. Derrick looked up at the screen. The clip looped, him standing calmly while the manager gestured toward the door. The anchors spoke over it, like sports commentators dissecting a replay. His mother's voice cracked. Baby, after all your success, they still see you as a problem? Derrick couldn't answer. He'd built a life out of proving people wrong. Degrees on the wall, spotless record, quiet confidence. Yet all it took was one dinner reservation for the world to remind him that respect here was rented, not owned. Across town, Primestone's PR office buzzed with panic. The CEO, a polished man named Gregory Holt, barked orders through speakerphone. We need control of the narrative. Post a statement, apologetic but neutral. Within the hour, it appeared on every platform. We at Primestone value diversity and do not tolerate discrimination. Last night's incident was a misunderstanding between staff and guests. We are reviewing procedures to ensure all patrons feel welcome. Derrick read it twice. Misunderstanding. That corporate translation of racism, the kind that let the guilty sleep well. He threw the phone onto the couch, rubbed his temples, whispered, They make it sound like I tripped over a chair, not got humiliated in front of my mama. By evening, reporters parked on the curb. Tripods rose like weeds. A young correspondent from Channel 5 called out, Mr. Lawson, any comment? He stayed inside. He'd already said enough by existing, but silence had a cost. Online, the arguments grew sharper. Supporters flooded his pages with love. You handled that with class, brother. Proud of you for staying calm. Then came the venom. Play the race card, get famous. Bet he made it up for attention. Maybe act less threatening next time. He shut the laptop. The glow on his face dimmed, replaced by exhaustion deeper than sleep deprivation. Saturday morning brought another blow. His firm, Lawson and Keys Realty, lost their biggest client. The email was brief. Given recent publicity, we've decided to postpone our partnership. We wish you the best. Postpone. Another polite word for run away. He stared at the message until the letters blurred. 4 years of work gone in 4 sentences. Lisa Keys, his business partner, called seconds later. Derrick, I tried to talk them out of it. They don't want the controversy. He laughed bitterly. Controversy? Asking to be seated is controversy now? Her voice softened. You didn't deserve this. I know, he said quietly, but that don't stop it. Meanwhile, the video kept growing. 10 million views, then 20. Tom Willis's inbox overflowed with interview requests. He agreed to one, only one, with the Atlanta Times. He told them it wasn't dramatic, it was worse. Normal. The kind of normal this country's addicted to. His quote became the headline, and just like that, public sympathy leaned toward Derrick again. But sympathy came with scrutiny. Everyone wanted a piece of him. Civil rights groups emailed. Activists tagged him. One pastor left a voicemail. "Brother Lawson, you have a platform now. Use it." He didn't feel like a platform. He felt like an open wound. That night, Elaine couldn't sleep. She sat by her son's door, humming an old gospel tune he'd grown up hearing on Sunday mornings. He opened the door, half smiling. "You still up, Ma?" She looked at him. The same little boy she used to send off to school with ironed shirts and warnings about staying polite. "You been quiet, baby. Too quiet." He sat beside her. The hall light painted soft shadows across the walls. "I keep thinking, if I just let it go, maybe it wouldn't be this big." She shook her head slowly. "Don't you dare blame yourself. You didn't start this storm, Derrick. They did. You just happened to stand in the rain long enough for folks to see it." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Still feels like I'm drowning." She squeezed his hand. "Then you keep swimming. You hear me? You keep swimming till the water remembers your name." Sunday brought protesters to Primestone's front steps. Students, church members, everyday folks holding signs. A reservation shouldn't depend on your skin. Justice served cold. Cameras captured chants mixing with car horns. Inside, the restaurant stayed closed. Windows dark. Silence thick as guilt. Online, Primestone's rating dropped from 5 stars to 1 overnight. Corporate sponsors distanced themselves. Influencers called for boycotts. But for every voice that shouted boycott, another whispered overreaction. Talk show callers debated empathy like it was politics. Derrick watched it all from his living room. His phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. He ignored it. Then another buzz. Then another. Finally, he answered. "Mr. Lawson, this is Rachel Nguyen, civil rights attorney. I represent a coalition addressing public discrimination cases. We'd like to help." He rubbed his forehead. "Help how?" "Press conference, legal support, whatever you're comfortable with. People listen when injustice gets a microphone." He hesitated. "I don't want fame. I want respect." "That's exactly why they'll listen," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. His mother called from the kitchen. "Who's that, baby?" He looked toward her, then back at the phone. Maybe it's time they hear my side." That evening, the news played footage of the protests. Reporters shouted into microphones. Slogans echoed. Strangers wore T-shirts with his name. Derrick turned the volume down. He could still hear the crowd outside his window chanting faintly through the night air. He stood there for a long time, watching lights flash from police cruisers and cell phones. His reflection in the glass looked tired, but unbroken. For the first time since that night, he wasn't just surviving the storm. He was learning to face it. By Monday morning, Atlanta's courthouse steps looked more like a stage. News vans lined the curb, cables coiled across the pavement, microphones sprouting like weeds. The sun hung low, caught in the glass towers, and the whole city felt paused, waiting for something to happen. At the center of it all stood Derrick Lawson, dark suit, steady posture, eyes shadowed from too many sleepless nights. Beside him stood Tom Willis, the retired journalist turned accidental activist, and Rachel Nguyen, the civil rights attorney whose calm command could cut through chaos. Behind them stretched a crowd of protesters, holding signs that rippled like ocean waves. Rachel adjusted the mic, whispered, "When you're ready." Derrick nodded once, He wasn't here for spectacle. He was here because silence had started to feel like surrender. The reporters called out his name, voices overlapping. "Mr. Lawson, do you plan to sue? Are you calling this racial profiling? What do you say to those who think it was a misunderstanding?" He raised a hand, not to silence them, just to steady himself. The murmurs faded, and then he spoke. "I'm not here to destroy a restaurant," he began, voice deep and measured, the kind that carried without shouting. "I'm here because I did everything right. I made a reservation. I showed up on time. I treated people with respect. And still, my family had to walk out in shame." The crowd stilled. Even the wind seemed to hush. He continued, words deliberate. "I've heard the word misunderstanding more times this week than I can count. But a misunderstanding doesn't look at you and decide you don't belong. A misunderstanding doesn't summon security when you ask to be treated fairly. That's not confusion. That's conditioning." Tom closed his eyes for a second. He'd covered speeches before, but this wasn't a speech. It was truth given shape. The line hit like thunder. You could feel it ripple through the crowd, through the older men nodding, the college students holding signs, the mothers clutching their kids closer. He went on, quieter now. "My mother's 70 years old. I wanted her to feel honored that night, not humiliated. And when I looked at her face as they pushed us out, I saw the same pain she thought she'd left behind in the 60s. That's what broke me." Rachel's eyes watered. She didn't wipe them. He paused, then leaned closer to the microphone. "Racism ain't always a slur. Sometimes it's a reservation that somehow disappears when your name don't sound white enough." The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, the sharp cry of "say that," echoing off the courthouse walls. Derrick didn't flinch. He just stood there, letting the noise roll over him like wind after a storm. When it quieted, he finished softly. "I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for recognition. That what happened is real. That it keeps happening. And that pretending otherwise is the biggest lie we tell ourselves as a country. That's all." He stepped back. The flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "You just changed something." That afternoon, the footage flooded every platform. Clips of his line, "Racism ain't always a slur," played on loop, stitched into montages, shared with captions like "Truth spoken plain." Even people who doubted him fell quiet. There was no aggression in his tone, no bitterness in his eyes, only tired honesty that cut deeper than outrage ever could. Talk show hosts quoted him. Politicians tweeted carefully worded statements. Primestone's PR team held emergency meetings that lasted all night. For once, that evening, Derrick sat on his porch again. Same spot, same creepy swing, same sky that somehow looked cleaner after you told the truth. His mother joined him, 2 mugs of tea steaming in the cooling air. "You did good, baby," she said quietly. He chuckled. "I just talked, Ma." She shook her head. "No, you testified." They sat in silence for a while, cicadas humming, city sounds fading into the distance. For the first time in weeks, Derrick's chest felt lighter. Not healed, but lighter. He checked his phone. Hundreds of messages. One from a stranger in Milwaukee. "My son watched your speech. He said he finally gets what I've been trying to teach him." Another from an older white man. "I was the manager of a restaurant once. I think about the times I looked away. Never again." Derrick exhaled. Maybe words could build something after all. Across town, Tom watched the press conference replay from his apartment. His wife stood behind him, hand on his shoulder. "You proud?" she asked. Tom smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it shouldn't have taken me this long to pick the camera back up." You did what mattered, she said. That's what counts. He nodded, eyes fixed on the screen where Derrick's calm face filled the frame. He did what mattered. I just pressed record. By midnight, Derrick's speech had reached 20 million views. But more importantly, the restaurant's corporate headquarters called for an internal review. Emails leaked. Messages between the manager and staff from that night. Words like, make sure the clientele stays upscale, and watch for large groups, keep things comfortable for regulars. The lie unraveled fast. The next morning, PrimeStone's CEO requested a meeting. For the first time since that night, Derrick smiled without forcing it. The storm wasn't over, but the wind had changed direction. He'd spent his whole life teaching himself how to stay quiet, to stay composed, to stay safe. Now he'd learned something else, how to speak and stay standing. 3 days after the press conference, the air around PrimeStone changed. The glass doors that once reflected quiet prejudice now reflected flashbulbs. The gold lettering above the entrance had been polished, but it couldn't hide the tarnish of reputation. The restaurant's CEO, Gregory Holt, arrived early that morning. Not in a limousine, not flanked by PR handlers, just him, a gray suit and a face that looked older than it had last week. He'd seen the numbers. Stock drop, sponsors gone, protest lines stretching 3 blocks. But this meeting wasn't about damage control anymore. It was about decency, something his business had lost trying to save face. At noon, Derrick Lawson walked through those same doors he'd once been shown out of. Same marble floors, same chandeliers, but the energy was different. Humbled, hushed, almost reverent. He wore no tie this time, just a plain white shirt under a navy blazer. His mother, Elaine, walked beside him, glowing in quiet grace. Jasmine and her husband followed. Every step they took echoed with memory. The new hostess, a young black woman with natural curls and a bright smile, greeted them warmly. Mr. Lawson, Mrs. Lawson, welcome back. We've been expecting you. Derrick nodded. Appreciate that. She led them to the center of the dining room, a large round table draped in fresh linen, candles flickering like small apologies. The very same table they'd been denied weeks ago. Beside it stood Gregory Holt and the former manager, Daniel Price, the man who'd told Derrick to step aside. Daniel's face was pale, his posture stripped of arrogance. Mr. Lawson, Gregory began, voice low but firm. Thank you for coming. Derrick met his eyes, steady. I wasn't sure I would. I wouldn't have blamed you, Gregory said quietly. But I needed you to hear this from me directly, not through a press release. He gestured to Daniel, who swallowed hard and stepped forward. Mr. Lawson, Daniel began, his voice trembling slightly. What I did was wrong. I told myself I was just following policy, keeping the peace. But the truth is, I made assumptions about you that I never would have made about someone else. And I can't undo that. He paused, eyes wet but clear. I'm sorry, to you, to your family, and to every person who's ever walked into this place and felt like they didn't belong. Derrick said nothing at first. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not cruel. Finally, he nodded once. Acknowledgement matters more than excuses. Thank you for saying it plain. Gregory stepped forward next. We've shut down this location for a full month. Every employee, including myself, is going through racial bias and cultural sensitivity training led by a nonprofit your lawyer recommended. We're also donating $250,000 to that same organization in your family's name. Elaine blinked, surprised. In our name? Yes, ma'am, Gregory said softly. Because what happened here shouldn't just shame us. It should change us. The restaurant was quiet, except for the gentle hum of jazz floating from the speakers, the same melody that had played the night of the incident. But now, it didn't sound haunting. It sounded healing. Derrick finally spoke, his tone calm but resolute. You know, I didn't want to destroy this place. I just wanted to prove we existed, that our respect shouldn't depend on someone else's comfort. Gregory nodded slowly. And you did. You reminded us all. He extended a hand. Derrick looked at it, not suspiciously, just thoughtfully, then shook it. It wasn't forgiveness. It was understanding. As the family sat, servers emerged, diverse, polite, and genuine. Plates of roasted chicken and seasoned vegetables appeared. Warm bread, glasses filled. Elaine smiled softly, whispering, "Now this feels right." For the first time in weeks, Derrick felt his chest unclench. He looked around at his mother's joy, his sister's laughter, even the staff's cautious relief. It wasn't about winning. It was about balance returning to a world that had tilted too far toward ignorance. Halfway through dinner, the lights dimmed slightly. A live jazz trio began playing near the bar. Soft, mellow, familiar. The opening notes of What a Wonderful World. Elaine's eyes filled instantly. Derrick smiled. "Told you I'd make it up to you, Ma." She squeezed his hand. "You didn't just make it up, baby. You made it matter." The night outside Primestone shimmered soft and quiet. Streetlights cast golden halos on the wet pavement. Cars whispered by, unaware that inside that restaurant, something far heavier than fine dining had shifted. A heart, a conscience, maybe even a country, if only for a moment. Derrick and his family stood by their car for a while, not rushing to leave. Elaine traced her fingers over the small bronze plaque near the entrance one more time. Her name, her son's, her family's etched in metal, a mark that said we were here. For once, that felt like enough. Later that week, Derrick sat on his porch again. Same wooden chair. Same quiet breeze moving through the Georgia night. But the silence around him wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. The kind that comes after a storm has screamed itself out. He thought about everything that had happened, the whispers at the host stand, the cameras flashing at the courthouse, the applause, the apology, the plaque. All of it replayed in fragments. None of it erased the pain, but somehow it made the pain matter. At another table, Tom Willis watched quietly, glass of water in hand, no camera this time. He'd been invited too, but stayed off to the side. He didn't want to document history tonight. He wanted to witness healing. He thought about something he'd written in his journal years ago. Change doesn't start when we shout. It starts when someone finally listens. And for once, someone had. When dinner ended, Gregory approached the table again. "Before you go, Mr. Lawson, we'd like to make one more gesture." He motioned to the wall near the entrance. There, mounted under glass, was a small bronze plaque that read, "In honor of the Lawson family," a reminder that dignity has no color. Elaine touched it gently, eyes glistening. "Well, that's something, isn't it?" Derrick smiled faintly. "Yeah, Mama, it is." They left the restaurant together, the night air warm and quiet. No cameras, no shouting, just peace. As they walked toward the car, Elaine leaned on her son's arm, whispering, "Feels different now, doesn't it? He looked back one last time at the golden light spilling from the windows. "It does," he said. "Same place, different heart." That was the thing about change. It never happened fast, never happened easy. But sometimes it happened loud enough that the silence after it sounded brand new. And for Derrick Lawson, that silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was justice finally catching its breath. He spoke softly, mostly to himself, but it sounded like he was talking to everyone who'd ever felt small in places that called themselves fine. "They thought they were protecting their restaurant," he said, words slow and weighted. But what they were really protecting was the lie. The lie that racism only lives in the streets, not in suits. That it comes with anger, not politeness. That it ends once you learn to smile. He leaned back, eyes on the night sky. Somewhere in the distance, he could still hear faint jazz drifting from a car radio. That same soft hum that had followed him since that night. But the truth, he whispered, is quieter than hate. It shows up in the pauses, in the way someone says "sir" like it costs them something, in the way a door opens slower for you than it does for them. That's the part people still don't want to see. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had built homes, signed contracts, lifted his daughter when she was small. Strong hands, but tired ones. He smiled faintly. You keep fighting long enough, and eventually, even the walls start listening. Elaine opened the door behind him. "You talking to yourself again, baby?" He chuckled. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm talking whoever's still pretending they don't hear us." She smiled, shaking her head. "Well, keep talking. The world needs it." He looked at her. At 70, she still carried the same fire she'd had marching in the 70s. Maybe that's where he got it from. The quiet strength. The ability to stay calm in rooms built to break you. Across town, Crimestone's walls looked the same, but the energy inside was different. The staff now gathered before each shift, starting the day with a single reminder written on a framed poster near the entrance. Respect isn't earned by color, it's proven by character. Some read it like scripture. Others just nodded and got to work. But no one ignored it. And Tom Willis, the man who'd pressed record, sat at his desk, writing again for the first time in years. The headline read, "When Truth walked in wearing a suit." He ended his article with a single line. Maybe change doesn't begin with outrage. Maybe it begins with a man like Derrick Lawson, standing in calm defiance, refusing to let dignity be optional. As the credits of the week rolled quietly across the city, the story faded from screens, replaced by newer headlines, fresher scandals. But in the hearts of those who'd watched, something lingered. Not the drama, not the debate, but that image of one man standing still, while the world around him tried to shrink him down. And somehow, that stillness spoke louder than any storm ever could.